Okay, it is conference championship week here in college football. 9 games for this weekend slate of college football. A lot of games with playoff implications, and obviously there's, like the CUSA championship game. Regardless, we're going to talk about every single one here in today's video, like we've been talking about every single college football game here in 2024. We started with week number 0 all the way till now, and we will also be predicting every single bowl game and every single playoff game here in the college football world as well. So 9 games this weekend. Of course, used to be 10, but the Pac-12 decided to, just collapse. But hey, they'll be back in a couple seasons. But 9 conference championship games today. We're going to be predicting, and of course, over this weekend in college football. And folks, if you have not yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more weekly college football predictions here on the channel. We'll be back next week because we have the Army-Navy game coming up. We're going to do a video just on the Army-Navy game, and then the bowl season, obviously, after that as well. As well on the channel, we also are doing daily college basketball predictions, our weekly NFL predictions, our daily NBA predictions. There's the aforementioned college basketball best bets, and also we have our UFC 310 predictions also posted on the channel. The flyweight main event from Las Vegas this weekend. Kai Asakura makes his UFC debut, taking on the champion Alexandre Pantoja. All right, let's get into the first of these 9 predictions. We will look at the playoffs at the end of this video as well. I have made my own bracket, and I'll show you guys where I think everything is right now, of course, for the playoffs. Okay, let's start things off with our first conference championship game. It is the CUSA. I like the CUSA, okay? I have nothing against this conference, but let's just be honest, guys. This is the worst conference in college football. There's no other way to put it, okay? Not bad teams in the conference, but we've talked about it all season long with the CUSA, and I'm going to say it again right now. There is a pretty clear divide amongst the best teams in the CUSA and then obviously the bottom feeders as well. You look at this game, though, Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State just played last week, and Western Kentucky won the football game in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Now, of course, this game is going to be at Jacksonville State because Jacksonville State has the conference tiebreaker over WKU. So the regular season, they both finished 8-4, but Jacksonville State finished the conference 7-1. For WKU, they were 6-2 in conference. They were on a really smooth path to the conference championship. It appeared at one point, 5-0 in conference, and they lost to La Tech. If you've been watching the channel throughout the season, you know we just absolutely despise Louisiana Tech. And then they lost to Liberty after that. By the way, Keaton Salter is going in the transfer portal, which is odd. Well, I mean, I get it, but I don't know. He missed his opportunity. Last year was his chance. Now he's just, I don't know where the hell he goes better than Liberty. Anyways, they lost to Liberty, and then last week needed to win one against Jacksonville State, needed help with Liberty losing as well to Sam Houston. They got that help. Sam Houston beats Liberty. Western Kentucky beats Jacksonville State. Western Kentucky then has the tiebreaker over Sam Houston because it was a really big victory they got on the road earlier this season against Sam Houston, winning the game 31-14. Both these teams are, really, really solid run teams. WKU will throw it more than Jacksonville State, but both these teams recently been trying to really run the football. But again, Western Kentucky is going to try to air it out a little bit more than Jacksonville State. But Jacksonville State primarily just keeps everything on the ground. That's really what they do. You got Tyler Huff, who's an option type guy, a mobile quarterback. Logan Smothers comes in as well at quarterback, and also their lead runner, obviously, is Trey Stewart. But it's going to be a lot of Trey Stewart and Tyler Huff. Trey Stewart finished the regular season with 1,400 yards. Tyler Huff with 1,200 yards on the ground. Yes, Tyler Huff was their quarterback. They can throw the ball a little bit, but really recently Jacksonville State has not done that. This is a run-heavy team that's going to try to run the ball down your throat. I mean, Huff eclipsed the 300-yard mark once all season long, and it was their victory earlier in the season at Eastern Michigan in double overtime. But Jacksonville State has been the best team in the CUSA this season. However, they've played a lot of close games recently. I mean, beating Liberty by 10 points, beating La Tech on the road by 7 points, beating Florida International by 3 points at home, and beating Sam Houston by 10. And of course, they just came off that loss to WKU in their last game. They're going to play some of Logan Smothers. They're going to play some of Tyler Huff. I guess Jacksonville State thinks that Smothers is the better passing quarterback, so he will come in a lot of passing situations, and obviously Huff is the mobile guy. I'm actually taking Western Kentucky to win this football game, though. Guys, we just saw it last week. It's not like Jacksonville State was playing to lose. They were still playing to win that football game, and WKU won the game. Given again, it was in Kentucky, but now you go down to Jacksonville, Alabama. I still like Western Kentucky to win this football game. I think their offense is just better. And again, Jacksonville State has played close games recently, and there was another close game they played last week against the Hilltoppers, but they ended up losing it. I think WKU is the best team that Jacksonville State's played all season long, obviously other than Louisville, who they played early in the season. I think Western Kentucky wins this football game. I like, again, what they've done at the quarterback position this year. Elijah Young can run the football, but Caden Vetkamp can run the ball too, and he can throw it, obviously. They started the season with the Texas State transfer in TJ Finley. Finley got benched pretty on in the season. They went to Vetkamp instead, and Caden Vetkamp's been pretty solid for them. He does turn the ball over a little bit, but I do think Western Kentucky as a whole has the better offense. I think they are able to stop this run attack from Jacksonville State, as the Gamecocks weren't really able to run the ball all that effectively last week. I mean, you get 97 yards on the ground for Tyler Huff. And again, 85 yards for Trey Stewart is not bad, but that's on 20 carries. They were able to effectively stop the run last week, where the Hilltoppers, Elijah Young was able to run it for them as well. Vetkamp threw for 300 yards. I do like the Hilltoppers to win this football game. I like them to win the Conference USA. I don't know what bowl game. Does this put them in the Bahamas Bowl? It might. No, I don't know where this puts them, honestly. But Idaho Potato Bowl, I think it might. Western Kentucky, I think, wins the CUSA, back-to-back victories in back-to-back weeks over the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. Let's go on to our next game, and we move to the American Championship, as we have got Tulane going on the road to take on Army. So Tulane controlled their own pathway to hosting the American Championship game as long as they could win on Thanksgiving against Memphis. And they absolutely laid an egg. It was I'm not gonna say an abysmal performance, but it was much different than the Tulane team we saw throughout the course of this regular season. It was a much different game that Tulane played in that one. They lose 34-24, and Memphis was just able to move the ball up and down the field all game long against Tulane. And okay, I'll say it right now, this is why I'm taking Army. Guys, Memphis and Mario Anderson were able to run for 177 yards just with Anderson. Their backup running back ran for 41 yards as well. They were able to just move the ball up and down the field at will against this Tulane team. Tulane's offense, again, pass-heavy approach. You have Darian, who's their starting quarterback. He's going to throw the ball a lot. I get that. But I really think Army's going to be able to run the ball up and down the field on Tulane in this football game. Mekhi Hughes did not have a big game in that game against Memphis. He had 9 carries for 15 yards. That's not going to cut it for the Tulane Green Wave, obviously, but he's been their best guy all season long in the run game. He's ran for 1,300 yards this season. He scored 15 touchdowns. But here's the thing, guys. Again, if Tulane's having trouble with Mario Anderson in Memphis, they should be having trouble with Army as well. I get it. Again, Army has not played their best football coming into this week. Obviously, the loss against Notre Dame was bad. Even prior to the Notre Dame game, they had 2 back-to-back games where they won against Air Force in North Texas, but didn't look incredibly great in those football games. But hear me out. I think Army's defense is going to win them this football game, and on top of that, the run game, obviously, because if you're picking Army, it's going to be the run game too. Army has evolved as an offense this season, of course. Their pass game has gotten better with Bryson Daly. I mean, there was conversation at time that Bryson Daly could potentially be in the Heisman Trophy race. Obviously, he's not there. But Daly can still run the football really effectively. In Army's last 3 games, Bryson Daly has ran for a combined 450 yards. That's a big deal. They've got guys who can run it, obviously. You got Bryson Daly, you've got Kanye Udo, and you got Noah Short as well. Those are the 3 primary running backs. Daly also, again, unlike previous Army quarterbacks, can actually throw the football as well. Now, again, Army's gone really run-heavy the last couple weeks, and I'd expect another run-heavy approach against Tulane, considering the way Memphis was able to beat them. On top of this, Tulane does not get this game at home. I would have liked it a lot more if Tulane were to get this game in Louisiana. I feel like Army should be able to contain Mekhi Hughes in this game. And I like the Tulane pass attack, but I think, again, it's nothing Army hasn't seen so far this season. Army has seen high-scoring teams all year long, and they have handled them. And their defense has played pretty well. I mean, they saw an East Carolina team that, again, has scored a lot this season. They held them to 28. Army scored 45. An Air Force team that, again, I know it's not a great victory over Air Force, but an Air Force team that was turning things around in November, Army beat them 20-3. North Texas, I understand they fell off a cliff at the end of the season. Army beat them 14-3. Their defense has shown up, and I'd expect the offense to find a way to get it going eventually. So, again, I'm going to trust in Bryson Daly. I'm going to trust in Kanye Udo. I'm going to trust in Noah Short, who had a huge start to the season. Obviously, since Noah Short hasn't really been too big of a factor for the Army Black Knights, but that's fine. Again, I'm going to take Army to beat Tulane in this football game. We like the run game, and we like the defense at Army as well. I do think they should be able to get this one done. Give me Army to be the American Conference champions, and then, of course, next week they'll move on to play Navy before their bowl game. So, yes, we're taking a big win for Army. Finishing the regular season 10-1, obviously going into the Army-Navy game, but their only loss being to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. That's a big deal. Give me Army to win the football game. Obviously, again, no playoff implications for this football game. Next up, we go to a game that is essentially a playoff game. This is a playoff game, and it's a big playoff game in the sense that the winner of this game, if it's Boise, definitely is getting a bye into the round of 8 for the college football playoff. Now, if UNLV wins, I don't think they jump either Iowa State or Arizona State, who will win the Big 12. So I think, again, if UNLV wins, it's going to give a bye to the winner of Iowa State, Arizona State. But if Boise State wins, again, they are going to force the Big 12 winner to play in the first round, and Boise will claim that bye. So UNLV is playing for the number 12 seed, and what a turnaround it has been for UNLV this season. I mean, it's just, I didn't expect them to be this good. Obviously, going into the season, I thought they were going to be good with Matthew Sluka. I've been high on Sluka, but I thought UNLV wasn't going to be as good, obviously, with Jade Maivia going to USC. At the time, we thought it was a really stupid move, Maivia going to USC, but apparently, it looks like he's the guy there now, right? It looks, obviously, Miller Moss has already entered the transfer portal. It looks like Maivia should be the guy in line to start next season for USC. We'll likely see him in their bowl game as well. I wouldn't see a reason why he wouldn't. But I thought UNLV was kind of screwed, without Maivia, but they get Matthew Sluka. Holy Cross quarterback. I liked him coming into the season, and I don't think Sluka played all that poorly. Again, I think they're better with Hajj Malik Williams, I'll be honest with you, something I didn't expect again once Sluka left the football team, obviously with that whole dispute in terms of his pay with his NIL money. But again, Sluka will enter the transfer portal. We'll see where he ends up next season. I would like to see Sluka in a spot like, I don't know, Georgia Tech would really work, I think. Again, Haynes King's gone. I just saw Zach Pyron enter the transfer portal. I wouldn't mind seeing Sluka there. There are squads that Matthew Sluka can play. There are run-heavy teams that Sluka can go to and excel in next season. We'll get to that. Maybe I'll do a transfer portal video after the regular season, or after the bowl season's over. If you want to see that, let me know. But you got Hajj Malik Williams in UNLV. I watched this team play in person a couple weeks ago. I've actually seen both these teams this year. They both came to San Jose. Watched both of them. UNLV won their last one against Nevada, but prior to that, again, it was a victory over the San Jose State Spartans. They won the game 27-16. Hajj Malik Williams is doing a really good job with this football team. Because, again, he's a better passer than Matthew Sluka. I'd say runner of the football, slightly, I would say Sluka's the better runner. I mean, Sluka had a game, I believe, at Holy Cross where he ran for about 290 yards in one game. It was crazy last season in the FCS. But Hajj Malik Williams, good runner of the ball. Ricky White, man, one of the elite receivers in college football. Ricky White finished with over 1,000 yards. He finished in the top 10 receiving yards this year in the country. But hey, shout out to my guy from San Jose State, Nick Nash, winning the Triple Crown receptions, touchdowns, and yards this season. The man's a monster. Nick Nash does not get the national publicity that he deserves. He should win the Biletnikoff this season. Big Nick Nash guy. I'm hoping he goes in the first 3 rounds of the draft. We'll see. I doubt it, I'll be honest with you. I did see one mock putting him pretty high, but I think, unfortunately for Nick Nash, it'll probably be a 4th round, day 3 pick, which sucks. Anyways, Hajj Malik Williams has done a great job with UNLV this season. The problem is they're taking on Boise State. Again, and the go-go offense for UNLV is unique, obviously. 2 in the backfield. They're going to motion around a lot. They're going to have DeJesus. Jacob DeJesus is going to come around a lot, take that end around. Obviously, Ricky White's going to be really involved in the pass game. We've seen this game once this season before. Now, the game was in Las Vegas, it was at Allegiant Stadium, and Boise ended up getting the win 29-24. And you can't talk about Boise without talking about their Heisman hopeful and Ashton Jeanty. Now, Jeanty's, I think, 350 yards away from breaking Barry Sanders' record. He'll probably do it, let's be honest with ourselves. He's got 2 games to do it, because regardless of what happens in this game, Boise's going to get a bowl game. Jeanty's going to play it to try to break Barry's record. And if they win this game, obviously, they're going to be in the playoffs. And he has a chance to get multiple games in the postseason. Now, do I think Boise's going to win a game in the playoffs, especially in the second round? Probably not. But still, Ashton Jeanty has a legitimate chance to break Barry's record. And he's going to take a step towards that in this game with UNLV. Now, Barry did that in, 11 games, which is insane. But, it is what it is. Good on Jeanty. He's a historical running back. And Maddox Madsen's been really good for Boise this season as well. Obviously, again, going into the season, a little bit of controversy around who's going to be the starting quarterback of this team. They got the USC, the former 5-star commit, and Malachi Nelson to transfer over here. Maddox Madsen beat out Malachi Nelson in the offseason. Madsen gets the starting job, and I think Madsen's done a really great job. I mean, this guy, again, he's LSU, right? Was he an LSU transfer? I think so. Maddox Madsen's done a great job with this football team, though. He's a sophomore. He'll be around for a while. Malachi Nelson is definitely going to have to hit the portal again because he's not going to play over Maddox Madsen as long as Madsen stays here, which he should. But Madsen has done an incredible job with this football team this season. 2,600 yards, 21 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But again, this team is Ashton Jeanty. And it's really based around if UNLV can stop Jeanty in this football game. Because again, Jeanty's worst game this season, all year long, came against UNLV, where he only ran for 130 yards. But that was his worst game of the year, and it was the toughest game, I'd say, Boise has played all season, with the exception of their game in Eugene against Oregon. Genty had 33 carries for 128 yards. I mean, that's 4 yards a carry. That is, though, his worst performance all year long. I think it's a difficult game for Boise, don't get me wrong. I really think it is. But the difference, though, between this and the previous game, last time was at Allegiant Stadium. It's in a dome. Of course, UNLV now has to go to Boise to play this football game. I don't know the weather conditions in Boise on Friday night. We will check it right now. Right now, as I'm recording this, which I'm recording this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, you're probably going to see this video at about 5:30-ish. It is 38 degrees in Boise, Idaho. On Friday night, this game is going to their mountain time, right? Yeah. Okay. So 6 p.m. I believe this game's at 6, right? Yes. Game at 6 p.m. Mountain time. It is going to be 33 degrees in Boise, Idaho. Boise State's used to this. They've practiced in this. They have been there all week long. They've been there all season long. Let's compare it to how hot it is in Vegas right now. In Vegas, it's 68, which is cold for Vegas. But guys, if you've ever been to Las Vegas, it's hot as hell. It's, in the summer it gets to high 90s, low hundreds. So it's a big difference. It's the conditions in this game is completely different. Obviously, again, they're not in a dome anymore. You're on that blue turf. You're at Albertson Stadium. It's a lot different for UNLV now, having to go to Boise to play this football game. The environment's different, it's colder, and you still have to deal with Ashton Genty. I like UNLV. I like what they've done this season with Hajj Malik Williams, obviously dealing with the Sluka controversy. But I just think Boise's the better football team. I like their defense. We've seen this game once before this season. I get it was close, but think about it, that game was at UNLV. Now they get it at Boise, and they get it in the cold as well. I would anticipate Boise State to win this football game. The line is -4. I think they cover it. Boise State goes out here and clinches their spot in the college football playoffs with a victory at home against the UNLV Rebels. Next up, we go to the Saturday games. We start things off in the Big 12. This is another playoff game between Arizona State and Iowa State. The winner moves on to the college football playoffs. The loser goes to the Alamo Bowl. All right. It's a good football game. It really is. Iowa State has been interesting all year long. They had those back-to-back losses, a 1-point loss to Texas Tech and a 9-point loss to the Kansas Jayhawks. But then after that, winning 3 games in a row against Cincinnati, against Utah, and against K-State. But Iowa State has consistently played close football all year long, but they have found ways to win. At one point, again, Iowa State was an undefeated football team. They were 7-0. They dropped 2 in a row, but they have rebounded and they have made the Big 12 championship game with a playoff berth on the line. Rocco Becht has been good this season. I'm not going to say he's been great, but he's been good for Iowa State. Their run game, okay. Carson Hansen's going to lead the charge, rushing for 600 yards this season. Jaden Higgins, though, the playmaker on the outside for Iowa State, obviously. Him and Jalen Noel, 2 1,000-yard receivers for Iowa State this season. And obviously, again, that's a result of Rocco Becht throwing them the football. I think Arizona State's the better football team, though. I think they are. They're ranked higher. That doesn't mean anything. Arizona State's ranked 16. Iowa State's ranked 18. The difference maker in this game, guys, is Cam Skattebo. It just is. Cam Skattebo, 1,400 yards in the regular season. Sam Levitt's good, and Sam Levitt's done everything Arizona State's asked him to do, and Jordan Tyson's a really good receiver as well, 1,100 receiving yards in the year. But the difference maker in this football game and in the Big 12 championship game to determine who makes the postseason this year is Cam Skattebo. It just is. 1,400 yards this season, 17 touchdowns. Skattebo has been great all year long. Now, it's the first matchup this season between Iowa State and Arizona State, but last 2 games for Skattebo, the win over BYU, huge victory, 150 yards on the ground for him. The win over Arizona in in Tempe, Tucson, Tempe's Arizona State. In Tucson, 180 yards for Skattebo as well. And again, Sam Levitt has been nothing but consistent. He's been everything. He's been consistent all year long for Arizona State as well. Again, I think the difference maker is Cam Skattebo in this game. I just think it is. I think Arizona State's going to be able to run the ball a lot. And even if they do get stuffed, I don't mind the passing ability out of Sam Levitt either. I think Rocco Becht, again, is not a bad quarterback, but I think he makes too many mistakes in a game like this. I think he'll make too many mistakes against a good Arizona State defense. An Arizona State defense who has won games when it's mattered all year long. They shut K-State down to 14 points, shut a good BYU offense to 23. And regardless what you think of what Arizona's done this season, this is a team still with, well, Noah Fafita wasn't good this season, but still a team with McMillan. They stopped them to 7 points in their final game of the season to clinch their spot into the Big 12 championship game. Regardless of how bad Utah's offense was this season, when Cam Rising was still playing, Arizona State got Utah at home on a Friday night and stopped Utah and won the football game by 8 points and limited the Utes to 19 points. I think the Arizona State defense makes a big difference in this football game, and obviously the biggest difference maker in this football game is the running back for Arizona State. It's Cam Skattebo. I think Skattebo, not alone, but I think he plays a huge difference in changing this football game, and I think the Arizona State Sun Devils win it in Dallas. I'm taking Skattebo, Sam Levitt, and Arizona State to win the football game, punching their ticket to the college football playoffs, where they will likely have to play in the first round because of Boise State's win in the Mountain West against UNLV. But we like Arizona State to get things done. They will run the ball all night long. Give me ASU at home against Iowa State. Next up, we move on to some MACtion. It is the season finale, of course, of the MACtion. We go to Ford Field in Detroit, Michigan for Miami of Ohio taking on the Ohio Bobcats. So again, two Ohio teams in this football game. An evenly matched game, I think so. I really think it is. I am going with the slight favorites in this football game, though. We're going with the Miami of Ohio Redhawks, a team that has completely turned around midway through the year. And I'm not going to lie to you. I wasn't against Miami of Ohio, but I did not see the respect they were getting with the Lions and the respect that people had for Miami of Ohio this season, just because we saw them play early in the year. And yeah, they were good enough just to lose against a lot of good, well, not good teams, but a lot of power teams. Again, we're talking about Northwestern, the Cincinnati loss, the Notre Dame loss. They beat UMass, they lose to Toledo. This is a football team that's 1-4. They've won 7 straight games going into this football game. That makes a huge difference. And for the Bobcats, this is a team that's won 5 straight games as well. They lost to Miami of Ohio in their first encounter earlier this year, but since then, Ohio's regrouped. They beat a really good Buffalo team with CJ Akbana, Victor Snow, and the guys. Aljay Henderson. They win that football game 47-16 at home. They blow out Kent State. Everybody does. They beat Eastern Michigan. They beat Toledo. They beat Ball State. Now here you have it, the rematch between Ohio and Miami of Ohio. Their first encounter was in Oxford, obviously the home of the Redhawks. Ohio's not a bad team at all. Parker Navarro is not going to win you a football game with his passing alone. I would say, honestly, that is the weakest part of this Ohio team. Coleman Owen's great. He's their leading receiver. I mean, Coleman Owen had 1,000 receiving yards this year. Parker Navarro had 2,000 passing yards. So again, half of his passing yards were because of Coleman Owen. What's going to win this football game for Ohio if they can't get it is the run game. It's the run game out of Parker Navarro. Again, I'm saying Parker Navarro's arm will not win you a football game. His legs will. Navarro, Anthony Tyus III, and Ricky Hunt Jr. have all been really good this season for Ohio. For Miami of Ohio, they are a team you might have heard of him before. He's been around for a minute here at Miami of Ohio. It is Brett Gabbert. Gabbert, again, will make some mistakes, but he is better, I think, personally, than Navarro is, at least with his arm. Gabbert's really not going to run the football. I think he finished the year with -8 rushing yards. He's not going to run the ball. This is a pass-heavy attack for Miami of Ohio that can run as well. Actually, I wouldn't call it a pass-heavy attack. They are a very balanced offense. Gabbert's going to give you around a 250-yard game every single week, but it's Keon Mosey, again, who is their best runner. He's got 1,050 rushing yards so far in the season, only 4 touchdowns. But again, this is a Miami of Ohio team that really relies on their defense, relies on the field positioning that their defense will get them, and their offense just kind of cashes in. You look at their last couple wins, again, they've played close football games. I get it. Went to Ball State, won the game by 6 points in Ball, Indiana. They beat Kent State 34-7. They beat Northern Illinois 20-9. They beat Bowling Green 28-12. A game that I actually thought Bowling Green was going to win. But again, Miami of Ohio went on the road and won the football game. And that's kind of where I decided, okay, I'm taking Miami of Ohio to win. I know it doesn't really apply too much to this football game, but they were able to shut down the best tight end in college football. No, not Colson Loveland. We're talking about Harold Fannin Jr. of Bowling Green. Stopped, I think, the second leading receiver in college football in Fannin to only 47 yards. I know that doesn't really apply too much in this football game because Ohio doesn't throw the ball that much and we're more concerned with their run game, but I do like the Miami of Ohio defense a lot. And we like Mosey, of course, in the run game. He had a really slow start to the season, but he's really picked it up since. He closed the season on that win streak, the 7-game winning streak. He has ran for 100 yards in 6 of those 7 games. So the end of the season has been really good for him. And again, Brett Gabbert is going to make the plays when the Red Hawks ask him to. That's why I like Miami of Ohio to win this football game. We've seen it before. Again, they played earlier this season. Miami of Ohio won in Oxford. Now the game's in Detroit, Michigan. But I do think Miami of Ohio picks up the W here. They're getting 2.5 points, and I think they will cover it. Give me the Miami of Ohio Redhawks to beat Ohio and win the Mid-American Championship. Next up, we go on to the Southeastern Conference. Some would say the best conference in college football. I don't know if that's true. The Big Ten's pretty good too. But here we go, Georgia and Texas. The rematch, obviously, of their first encounter played in Austin earlier this season, and that was a beatdown by Georgia in that football game. They go on the road, they beat Texas 30-15. It felt like that game was a lot more of a blowout than the score seems. It never really felt Texas was in that football game. For a slight moment, they were in the third quarter, but for the most part, it was all Georgia dominating that football game against Texas. What has Texas done since the loss to Georgia? A win on the road against Vanderbilt, a win over Florida, a win on the road in Fayetteville against the Arkansas Razorbacks, a win over Kentucky, and that big victory last week at Kyle Field in front of 100,000 people against Texas A&M. It was not Texas's best performance. Obviously, again, Quinn Ewers is playing hurt. I don't know, no. I think Arch Manning not injured is better than Quinn Ewers injured. Ewers is hobbling. He's on that ankle. We will see how he performs in this Georgia game. But again, Quinn Ewers did not have his best performance in the first Georgia game because of the pass rush and the ability that Georgia had to get to the quarterback. Where I think this game is different, though, from that original game in Austin is Quintavion Wisner had 50 rushing yards in that first game against Georgia. I don't think that happens again. They've gone to him a lot. They've got him, they got Jaden Blue, but Wisner's the guy. Back-to-back games against Kentucky and Texas A&M, 158 and 186 rushing yards. He is the difference maker in this football game, and if Texas is going to win, it's going to be because of their run game. Now, the other way Texas is going to win is because of the quarterback play of Carson Beck. Let's not try to dispute that. That's what it is. I don't think Carson Beck is as bad as people make him out to be. But in an elite game like this, in a playoff-like game, even though both these teams are making the playoffs, that's potentially what can make a difference. Carson Beck's receiving core is not doing him any favors. I mean, there was at least 4 balls that were dropped in that game against Georgia Tech. But here's the thing. The defense out of Georgia got ran on all game long against the Yellow Jackets and Haynes King. They were able to move the ball all game long against Georgia. I don't care. Georgia won the game in 8 overtimes. I don't give a damn. They gave up 42 points to Georgia Tech and arguably should have lost the football game. If that targeting call is called on the Haynes King fumble, Georgia Tech wins the football game, and Georgia's playing for their season on Saturday in Atlanta against Texas. Also, something to note, it's a relative home game, basically, for the Georgia Bulldogs. It's the advantage they get playing in the Southeastern Conference, but essentially, again, they're in Georgia. You know, again, they're going to get the faithful from Athens at this football game. I don't really think the Georgia defense is as good as it was at the start of the season, and really at the Texas game, too. We saw Jackson Dart have a lot of success against Texas. I get it again. Dart, one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football this season. But still, we've seen quarterbacks have success against Georgia since that game that they played against Texas. Carson Beck has been better. I will give Carson Beck that. He's been much better. He was better in the Tennessee game. UMass game doesn't count. He was better in the Georgia Tech game. Okay, I will give Carson Beck that. But ultimately, we're going with the Texas Longhorns. I don't think they lose to Georgia twice this season. I don't think they do. And I think, again, Texas, Quinn Ewers, I don't think is playing well at all, but I think their run game's the difference maker in this one. Ewers, I think, just needs to make the right play at certain points in this football game. He doesn't have to will this team to victory. And now, again, has Quinn Ewers ever done that for Texas this season? Not really, in all fairness. He hasn't been the one just kind of willing them to victory. It hasn't happened yet. I'll make the argument Arch Manning is potentially better. Again, with the ankle of Quinn Ewers, I think Arch Manning is better than what Quinn Ewers has been doing this, last couple of games, and especially the last game where they, barely got by A&M. And again, we got to mention Texas's defense too. 0 points allowed against A&M. The A&M score was a fumble recovery touchdown. So, at the same time, Texas has done a really good job on the defensive front. 14 points to Kentucky, 10 against Arkansas, 17 against Florida. They've done a good job. And I think they should be able to contain Georgia in this football game. Georgia's run game hasn't been great recently. And also, I don't know if we can trust Carson Beck. I just don't think we can. I don't think we can trust Quinn Ewers either. I don't think these quarterbacks are the difference maker in their teams, I'll be honest with you. But I think it's the run game out of Texas, and it's the way the Georgia defense has been playing now compared to their first encounter against Texas earlier this season is why I think the Longhorns win this football game, and Texas wins the SEC in their first season with the conference. We're taking the Longhorns to punch their ticket to the second round of the college football playoff. Again, this is essentially what this is. This is a first round matchup. If you lose this matchup, you got to play again in the first round. This is a first round game, and we're taking Texas to advance to the second round. They beat Georgia. The spread is what? 2.5 points. We'll take it. Give me the Longhorns to beat the Bulldogs in Georgia. Next up, we go to the Sun Belt. We've got the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns taking on the Marshall Thundering Herd. Louisiana has been the best team in the Sun Belt all season long. Now, this is the conference championship game with the widest spread, and I get it, because I do think Louisiana kind of handles Marshall in this football game. Two teams that have not played this season. Louisiana had their little hiccup a couple weeks ago against South Alabama. They have recovered since, and they've looked good in their last two games against both Troy and against Louisiana Monroe. Now I get it. Louisiana Monroe really fell off a cliff from the beginning of the season, but I do think Louisiana is the best team, of course, in the Sun Belt Conference this year, and I think that goes without saying. They've been really good all year long. I get it, the loss to South Alabama, but what really makes a difference in this football, well, not a big difference, but what is something that, will matter in this game is if Ben Wooldridge plays or not. I don't know. I think he's questionable for this game. I would expect it not to be Wooldridge and instead be the backup in Chandler Fields, another senior who has not done a bad job off the bench. Chandler Fields has been pretty good, honestly, for Louisiana. If it's Wooldridge, great. If it's Fields, I still think Louisiana wins, and I still think they cover. Wooldridge, of course, has been a starter all year long, but Fields has played the last two games, and he has not done a bad job for Louisiana at all. But Louisiana has gone a little bit more run-heavy since, obviously, the loss to South Alabama was with Chandler Fields. They've given the ball more to Bill Davis on the ground. They've got Zylan Perry as well, two really solid runners for this Ragin' Cajuns team. Again, a team that only lost one game in the regular season in the Sun Belt Conference. Their only other loss was to, obviously, a team in the American Championship game we're talking about, Tulane. Marshall this season, 3 losses. We're talking about the VTech loss. We've got the loss to Ohio State and the loss to Georgia Southern. But again, only one loss in the Sun Belt. It was the Georgia Southern loss. Marshall, the winner of the Sun Belt East. In Louisiana, the Ragin' Cajuns, the winner of the Sun Belt West. Marshall's been playing some really tough football, but they've been winning close games against Coastal Carolina, UL Monroe, Old Dominion, and James Madison. And the JMU win was the one. Actually, they were already in the championship. No. They needed to win that game because if they lost to JMU, it would have been Georgia Southern in this game against Louisiana instead. Marshall, pulls it out. They win the game by 2 on the road at JMU. Really good defensive performance at points in that football game, but their run game was able to come through, and, Braylon Braxton just does enough for this Marshall football team. He can run, he can throw. They've got A.J. Turner. They went from Stone Earl to Braylon Braxton in the middle of the season, and I would say Braylon Braxton has been a better quarterback this year than Earl. He can do it on the ground, and again, he can throw at times as well, but essentially, again, his best performance all year long was the win on the road at Old Dominion, a game where Marshall scores 42 points. Braylon Braxton with 200 yards passing, 150 yards rushing for the victory for the Thundering Herd. However, again, they're playing the team that I think has the best defense in the Sun Belt Conference and the team that can really score the most as well. Louisiana, by far, again, the Ragin' Cajuns have been the best team in the Sun Belt all year long. I feel like it would be stupid to not take Louisiana in this football game, considering the way they've been playing all year long. And additionally, again, like the CUSA, like the Mountain West, the Sun Belt also plays these conference championship games at, they play them at, home fields. So Louisiana gets this game at home. That's going to make a difference. That'll make a difference. I think they're going to win this football game like all the G4 games, G5 games are, at home fields, except for the MAC who gets it at Ford Field. I'm taking Louisiana. Give me the Ragin' Cajuns to win at home against the Marshall Thundering Herd. They'll cover the 5.5 points, and they will get the job done, whoever the quarterback is, even though we would like to see it be Ben Wooldridge. We move on to the Big Ten. I'm not going to say it's we're going to the ACC. Big Ten's last. Okay, that's fine. We'll go to the ACC. Clemson versus SMU. They're at the same time, which sucks. The ACC championship game, the Big Ten championship game are at exactly the same time, and there's UFC at this time as well. But we've got the Clemson Tigers taking on the Southern Methodist Mustangs. SMU's getting 2.5 points. and we like SMU to win. Guys, this has been the best team in the ACC all year long, and hear me out. This is the start of a dynasty that SMU is going to create in the Atlantic Coast Conference, even though they're in Texas, which, who knows? They're on the coast of not really the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, but it's there. Regardless, SMU is the best team in the ACC. I've said that all year long. After we saw them beat Louisville, after we saw them dominate Stanford, and then, escape out that overtime game against Duke. This is the best team in the ACC. Kevin Jennings has been phenomenal for SMU this season as well. Kevin Jennings doesn't get the national attention that he deserves for what he has done in his sophomore season with Southern Methodist this year. He's done a great job, truly. He was playing, obviously, last year for SMU as well. Didn't start, but played some, and obviously this is his sophomore year, redshirted his first year in 2022, his freshman season, his true freshman year in 2022. But Kevin Jennings has been great, and also Brashard Smith's been really good too. Brashard Smith's been amazing for Southern Methodist, 1,200 rushing yards this season. But last 2 games, it has been a lot of Kevin Jennings. And Kevin Jennings has done a great job, did a good job in the Virginia game, took care of business in the Cal game as well. Their only loss all year, Southern Methodist, is that loss at home against BYU. But I'll say that's before SMU really figured it out. It's before their offense really figured it out. When did they figure it out? The week after. 66 points against Texas Christian, 42 points against Florida State, 34 against Louisville, 40 against Stanford, 28 against Duke, 48 against Pitt. One of the most impressive games I've seen all season. All right. Undefeated in the ACC, Pittsburgh, undefeated in general. Pittsburgh goes on the road to Dallas to take on SMU, who's undefeated in the conference. That was the game that we were going to find out, truly, who's the best team in the conference at the time. Who is a contender and who is a pretender. Guys, the pretenders were Pitt. I know, again, their season went downhill after Eli Holstein got injured, but still, Holstein was playing that SMU game, and Southern Methodist absolutely dominated. They dominated with their defense, who continues to play better and better, and Kevin Jennings and Brashard Smith, they dominated on the offensive side of the ball as well. That's why we like SMU to beat Clemson in this football game. Clemson has just made too many mistakes all year long. They've lost 3 games. Given 2 of them were in conference, only one of them was in conference to Louisville. Their other 2 losses are in the SEC. And I'll get rid of the Georgia game. I really don't care about that one. Beginning of the season, who cares? The Louisville loss was confusing. That game was in Death Valley, and Clemson just got beat. Louisville, beat them up. Clemson scored at the end to make that game close. It's more of what Clemson has done recently. A lackluster win against Virginia Tech, but they won it. A Pitt win on the road at Acrisure Stadium, Heinz Field, where, again, that game was won with the big Cade Klubnik run at the end of the game for Clemson. Citadel, don't care. And then the loss last week against South Carolina. South Carolina is a good football team. I didn't think Lenora Sellers was that guy at the beginning of the season, but no, Lenora Sellers is going to be a big-time player for a long time in the SEC conference. But unfortunately for Clemson, they lost the football game. They weren't able to run it. Klubnik was just okay. And ultimately, I think they are outmatched in this SMU game as well. I see a lot of people picking Clemson. I don't see it. SMU can score. SMU can play defense. I don't think Clemson really can keep up with this team. Trust me, guys. I think SMU, I don't know if they've got a legitimate chance to win the entire thing, but I don't mind them at all. They're going to get a bye. Regardless, SMU should get in the tournament, even if they do lose to Clemson. I mean, it would be stupid, I think, if they put a 3-loss Alabama team over a 2-loss SMU with losses to Clemson and Brigham Young. But I do like what Kevin Jennings does. I do like what the run game does. I do like what the run game does as well with Brashard Smith and company. Kevin Jennings can take off as well, but again, in primary is Smith running the football. On top of this, again, guys, Clemson, I think they got to win this football game to get in. I don't think they can get in with a loss here. I think the committee would be more inclined to put a 2-loss Miami team over Clemson. But regardless, again, we just have to accept what's happening here, guys. If Clemson does not win this football game, the Alabama Crimson Tide are going to find their way in the postseason. There's no other way around it. Let's just be honest. Alabama's getting in the playoffs if Clemson doesn't win. Because if someone doesn't snatch a bid, which the only opportunity for that here is Clemson, Alabama's waltzing right into the playoffs with 3 losses. Because they're not going to put 4-loss Clemson in, and they're not going to put 2-loss Miami in with losses against Syracuse and Georgia Tech with no ranked victories. This sets up for Alabama in the postseason, but I just don't see Clemson beating Southern Methodist. I like SMU too much. I think their defense continues to play better and better all season long. We like the run game with Brashard Smith, and Kevin Jennings, again, is one of the more underappreciated quarterbacks in all of college football. I get it again. He is somewhat a product of the run game and what's been built around him. I get that. But in a sophomore season, Kevin Jennings has done an excellent job for SMU. I think Southern Methodist goes to Charlotte, North Carolina, to Bank of America Stadium, and they win their first ever Atlantic Coast Conference Championship, giving the Mustangs of SMU to beat Clemson and advance to the second round of the college football playoffs. We go on to our final game. We mentioned it earlier. Here it is, the Big Ten championship game. The Penn State Nittany Lions go on the, well, they're both going on the road. Penn State has a shorter trip to Indianapolis, Indiana to take on the Oregon Ducks. I was there last year for the Big Ten championship game. I will not be attending this year, even though I see on ESPN tickets are $16. I paid $50 last year for Michigan, Iowa. $13 to go to this game. Where was this last year? It's 1 versus 4. What? And I paid $60 to go watch Blake Corum dominate Iowa? I get it. Or I get it. Ohio State fans probably sold all their tickets, but you can get lower bowl for $70. How much is a flight to Indiana this weekend? How much is a flight? I'm kidding. Seriously? That's so stupid. I paid. Anyways, that just makes me mad I'm not out there right now. Regardless, Oregon, Penn State. I've been saying it all year long, and maybe it'll come to bite me in the ass eventually, but you know what? I don't think it's going to. I don't think Penn State's that good. I've said it all year long. I think Indiana beats Penn State. I think Penn State's the 4th best team in the Big Ten. Guys, their big victory is Illinois this season. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, Indiana's win is Michigan. I don't care. Indiana's better than Penn State. Penn State played a close game against Minnesota. And here's my thing, real quick. If you've been watching all year long, you know what I'm talking about. Guys, Penn State has unimpressively beat teams all year long. Indiana's blown all these Big Ten bottom feeders out all year long. Penn State barely beats USC. They barely beat Minnesota. They're horrible in the Minnesota game and just get by. This team doesn't impress me. Drew Aller has never really impressed me, I'll be honest with you. Drew Aller, to me, is nothing but a game manager. I'm going to be honest, guys. Singleton, good running back. I don't know. I'm not blown away with anything Penn State does. They play good defense. I'll give them that. But they're playing the Oregon Ducks, who, sure, have been a little bit lackluster as of late, but you know what? They gave me all the confidence I need to see out the Oregon Ducks in their win over Washington. I was a little bit concerned. The Maryland victory, I was there for that. The Wisconsin game on the road in Madison, I was concerned. They only won the game by 3 points. They scored 16 points and barely get out of it. No, the UW victory was everything we needed to see out the Oregon Ducks. This offense is fine. Dylan Gabriel, who is the all-time leader in touchdowns in collegiate football history, will be fine. Jordan James has been great this season. The receiving core with Tez Johnson, with Evan Stewart, with Trayshawn Holden, they will be fine. They should dominate Penn State in this football game. The only thing, again, is Penn State's heading on over from College Park, I believe it's College Park, to Happy Valley, over to Indianapolis in this football game. Oregon's got to go cross country. Penn State's already on the time zone. Oregon's got to cross 3 time zones for this football game, which is kind of crazy that, again, this is where they're at for their conference championship game. But, you know, money's money, so Oregon's in the Big Ten. We could have had Oregon versus Arizona State in the Pac-12 championship game, but you know what? Here we are. And we would have had Penn State versus Indiana. Yes, we would have Penn State and Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. But again, I know everything changes because Oregon wouldn't have been in the conference, and then Ohio State doesn't have their other loss. But regardless, I think Oregon dominates Penn State. Again, I've never been blown away with Penn State all season long, and I'm still not blown away. What does this team do all that well? They play decent defense, I'll give you that. They play good defense. But this offense is just not that good. I think Oregon, sure, they'll give up some points, but ultimately this will be a close game in the first half, but Oregon will pull away in the second. I'm taking the Oregon Ducks, -3.5, money line -185, take whatever you want. Oregon will win this football game by more than one score. I truly think so. They are the much better football team in this game, and I think the Oregon Ducks take care of business. They win this game in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium. They go to the postseason. Obviously, again, Penn State has already locked up their spot in the postseason as well. But again, we've said it before. We'll say it again. This is essentially a first-round playoff game because the winner of this game immediately goes to the second round and gets a bye. The loser has to play probably at home in the first round of the postseason. But we're taking the Oregon Ducks to take care of business and win this football game at Lucas Oil against the Penn State Nittany Lions. We're not done yet because here is our playoff picture. Not what I would pick, but what I think the committee will pick. So here it is. Boom. We start things off with the number 1 seed. We are talking about the Oregon Ducks. Obviously, their victory over Penn State puts them there. There is no disputing that. We've got the number 2 seed. That will be the Texas Longhorns. Again, no disputing that. They beat Georgia. They should be in that spot. They will not be above the only undefeated team in all of college football, though, in the Oregon Ducks. Number 3, SMU. Again, no disputing that. They win the ACC. They're there. Clemson wins the ACC. They are there, too. Actually, Boise's probably 3 and Clemson's 4. But still, SMU, I think we're a big Kevin Jennings guy here. I think Southern Methodist takes care of business. 4, Boise State. They're going to be ranked higher than Arizona State. Again, if UNLV wins, UNLV will be the 12th seed and Arizona State will be the 4th seed. Or Iowa State, whoever wins that football game. Again, the way we project it, we think Boise's winning, so Boise will be the number 4 seed with Ashton Genty and Maddox Madsen. Number 5, this is where things get a little tricky. I think it's going to be the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I know. I think they're going to put the one-loss Notre Dame Fighting Irish, which, guys, who did they lose to this season? Who was it? Oh, it wasn't a MAC team, was it? It wasn't a MAC team that's not even in their conference. It's not a MAC team that's 8-4 or 7-5. Oh, it is. It's Northern Illinois. And Notre Dame. Who do they beat in their conference championship game? Oh, right. They don't have to play one. Notre Dame's 5 though. They're going to jump ahead of Penn State. That's just how they're going to do it. I hate it. They should be 6. Penn State should not be. Again, they should not be punished for having to play this football game. But I think Notre Dame's going to be 5. Now I am making this video as actually the college football playoff rankings are coming out. I think actually that's happening right now as I'm making this video, but this is the way I project it to happen. Again, could change. We'll go over this again next week, honestly, when the Army-Navy game comes out. Actually, I'm going to have nothing to project anymore, but whatever, right? Because the playoffs have already been, they've already been finalized by then. But regardless, we'll go over our playoff predictions, of course, when we get there. I think 5 is going to be Notre Dame. I think it's going to be. I think Penn State's going to get punished, and that's why ultimately Penn State's not 7, not 6. They're 7, because Ohio State's going to be 6. They're both going to have 2 losses. The difference, Ohio State beat Penn State. They both lost to Oregon. Penn State lost to Ohio State and Oregon. Ohio State's losses are Michigan and Oregon. But Ohio State beat Penn State. So Ohio State will probably be ranked above Penn State, even though they've lost twice this season and they lost to Michigan for the 4th straight year. It's horrible. But they will be 6, which means number 7, the Penn State Nittany Lions. It's where they should be, I wouldn't put them there. I'd put them at 5, even though I don't think, again, me thinking Penn State isn't good doesn't mean that I don't think they deserve to be ranked number 5. They should be ranked number 5, but I think this is where they will end up. They'll end up number 7. Again, we just went over it. They lose the Big Ten championship game. They get punished. They go from 5 to 7. That's where they go. Number 8, Georgia. I don't think they slide Georgia under Tennessee. Obviously, they beat Tennessee, so they kind of have to be there. Like, Georgia is kind of stuck. The only thing that can change Georgia's spot is Indiana. But if Indiana were to change Georgia's spot, they'd have to jump both them and Tennessee. Because they can't just jump Tennessee, I don't think. They have to jump both of them. I don't think the committee is going to place Indiana above Georgia. Because again, it goes Georgia, then Tennessee, then Indiana. Well, Georgia's not going to slide under Tennessee, and Indiana's not going to jump both of them. And I don't think Indiana's just going to jump Tennessee. So they could actually mess it up if they don't want an SEC versus SEC game and a Big Ten versus Big Ten game. But honestly, I don't think they care, because this is not a bowl game. This is at this is going to be in Athens for this football game, and the game with Penn State's going to be in Happy Valley. So I don't think they care. I think Georgia is 8. They have nowhere to go, honestly. If they lose, they seriously have nowhere to go. So 9 is the Tennessee Volunteers. Again, they didn't play, but that's where they will end up. Like Penn State, I don't think Tennessee's good at all. I really don't think they are. There are some frauds to me in this bracket. They start with Penn State, then to Tennessee, and we'll get to another one later. But I do see the other team in the capability of potentially winning. Boise's fraudulent, but they got to be there, so whatever. They won the Mountain West. Good for them. Number 10, Indiana, right? Indiana's in. No disputing that. Huge victory against Purdue last week. Shout out to the Hoosiers winning the old Oaken Bucket again. Crazy. Kurt Signetti has, reignited this fan base. It's great. We're cheering for him. If Indiana goes to Happy Valley, I'm gonna want to go. I don't know how expensive that will be. I'll think about it if I can. Or if it's not too expensive, I'll think about heading on over to Pennsylvania for that one. I've never been to Pennsylvania, so I'd consider it. It'll be really cold, be early December, but if I can find a somewhat cheap flight on like Frontier, I'll think about it. I think that's where Indiana goes. I think they'll be in the 10-7 game. They're not going to slide under our 11th seed in Alabama. They're going to get in, guys. Who else do you put in? They're not going to put... Guys, I would want South Carolina in, but South Carolina did lose to Alabama this season. So how are you going to say that, South Carolina deserves to be in over them? Clemson, 4 losses. Miami, I get it, but honestly, I'd rather have Miami in. I know they've had 2 losses, but they haven't beat anybody, but still, they've been kind of good this season, and they don't have 3 losses like Alabama does. Who else can get in? You're not putting Brigham Young in. I don't think. You can't put BYU in. They've lost twice, but they lost to Kansas and they lost to Arizona State. You put the loser of the Big 12 championship game in. If it's Arizona State, maybe, but I still don't think you can put them in. Army, no, they lost to Notre Dame. Can't put them in, even with their victory. And then the only other thing that maybe could happen, UNLV beats Boise, and then do you keep Boise in as the 11th team in the playoffs as an at-large? Who am I kidding? They're not going to put Boise State in over Alabama. Let's just stop having this conversation. Alabama's in the playoffs, okay? I think they're kind of fraudulent, but at the same time, Alabama could definitely upset Ohio State. And honestly, I'll make the bracket. I'll pick the bracket right now. Everything can change, obviously, because I still need to see games played, but this is how I pick the bracket right now, okay? Arizona State versus Notre Dame, I'm taking Notre Dame, okay? Tennessee versus Georgia, I'm taking Georgia. Alabama versus Ohio State, I'm taking Alabama. Indiana versus Penn State, we're taking Indiana, okay? Notre Dame versus Boise. Hear me out, I'm actually going to take Boise. Yeah, I'd take Boise. That'd be close, I'd take Boise. Georgia, Oregon, I'd take Oregon. SMU versus Alabama, I'm taking SMU. Indiana versus Texas. I hate to say I'm taking Texas. Texas versus SMU, we're taking Texas. Oregon versus Boise State, taking Oregon. Oregon versus Texas, we're taking Oregon. Again, things can change, but that's what I have right now. Again, a lot can change from now to the postseason, and obviously, again, we're going to have our official predictions for the postseason later on this year. So, folks, that'll do it for our conference championships predictions here for college football here in 2024. Thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back again next week for the Army-Navy game and then bowl season after that. Folks, thank y'all for watching, and Mamba forever.